This is my 1998 Jeep Wrangler TJ. I've done all the modifications to it myself, so I take a lot of pride in it. I took the Jeep up to Jawbone Canyon this weekend. I was going to show you some great four-wheeling videos, but instead, the Jeep overheated. I decided that the first video I would do would be showing you how to flush the coolant system of the Jeep Wrangler TJ. I do want to point out that if anything is wrong in this video, well, that's just how the video that I watched on YouTube told me how to do it, and that maybe YouTube isn't the best place to learn how to work on your vehicles. As soon as it started overheating, I pulled over and let it cool down. Once it was cool to the touch, I opened it up to check the level, and it looked like, I don't know, poop, I guess, but it was just bad. So I knew that no matter what, I was gonna have to flush the system. There are 4 areas that have to be flushed. You got the radiator, the reservoir, the heater core, which is behind the firewall, and then the engine block. Now the engine block has the thermostat right behind here, and you gotta remove this to access that, otherwise you won't be able to flush the engine block. So the first thing I'll do before I start disconnecting anything is I'm gonna drain the radiator. Grab a bucket and get ready to get dirty a little bit. Underneath the vehicle, you got the radiator has this plug right here. So you're gonna wanna pull this and drain the fluid out. It's super easy with one hand. It's probably gonna like squirt out a bunch and make a mess. Ooh yeah. Just let that drain out, and then we'll drain some other stuff too. Once the radiator's drained, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is drain the engine block. Find the hose that runs to the bottom of the radiator and get a good view of that for you. Of course, the linkage is in the way. There's a clamp on that. You just wanna loosen that up. Either a flathead screwdriver or a wrench, pair of pliers. This one I have a bad feeling about, but it's gonna really pour out. Hopefully it won't be as bad as I think it's gonna be. Okay, here it comes. Oh, that is real nasty. Next, I'm going to drain the reservoir. I feel like that should be the easiest part, so it's probably going to be the most difficult. And you just want to remove this hose here and then dump it out. Okay. To flush the thermostat, I have to remove the housing that it's in, which is, hold on. To flush the thermostat, I have to remove the housing that it's in. The housing for the thermostat is this right here. There's a bolt here and a bolt underneath, right over here. To flush the block, we're gonna remove the top hose that runs from the radiator to the engine block. The lower hose is already disconnected from the radiator. Then we're just gonna run water through this until all the muck comes out and it's just clear water. So we're just gonna let that go until it starts coming out clear. All right, once the water that starts coming out of your engine block is clear, you wanna go ahead and switch over to the radiator. All right, before we fill everything back up, I'm gonna clean off the old gasket here and put a new one on. Just take a scraper or a razor blade and clean it off the surface. Put that on there like that, and then put it back up against the engine. Spring side goes in towards the engine. Now that I have the thermostat back in and the housing reinstalled, I'm going to close the drain valve on the radiator, install those hoses on the bottom, fill up the hoses so I don't have any air, and then I'm going to fill up the radiator and the reservoir before I start the engine to bleed out any air that's in there. So right now I have lost a clamp that goes around one of the hoses. Just standard operating procedure for when I'm working on something. And it seems like everything's going right. Found it. It was right where I left it, on the ground underneath the Jeep somewhere for some reason. Now that I've flushed the system, filled everything back up, I'm going to turn on the engine and run it with the radiator cap off. That way it can push any air in the system out. Once I get the levels right, I can fill it up after that. All right, now that I got everything hooked up, filled the reservoir up, I filled the radiator up, had it running for a while now. It's made its way up to its normal operating temperature, and it should be bleeding out all the air. After I've done this for a while, turn it off, and I let it cool down. Now that the fluid's going to be low again, I'm going to have to fill it up, but you don't want to put fluid into a hot engine block because you have a good chance of cracking the engine block in. So I'm just going to let it sit for like half an hour to an hour, let it cool down, then I'll come back out here, fill this up one more time, cap it off, and then take it out for a ride. Hopefully it don't overheat. I mean, that was the goal of this whole thing. Well, driving along